And I want to start by thanking my former colleague from the legislature, Senator Nancy Skinner, for wading into this issue and beginning to move things in at least a positive direction in terms of where we're headed. And so I'm very grateful for that work and very appreciative of that. But I do have some concerns with the overall structure, and some of this is just more a statement of fact than perhaps anything that we can do as an agency. I think the goals that have been laid out are the goals. I think if we go back and we look at the 2018 baseline, we're essentially aspiring by 2025, 2026 to get right where we were in 2018. But I think my broader concern as it relates to the achievement of the goals outlined is a simple reality that we don't have a mechanism to ensure that this is not just passed on to the drivers. We don't have a mechanism to ensure that this doesn't just crowd out low-income drivers. And there's no way for us to ensure that the TNCs actually bear the cost to address the air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions that they are creating, not only creating, but they are profiting off of. And I think we should have every assumption moving into this that an industry that is predicated and based on labor exploitation will simply find a way to exploit their workers in order to do this, while when not exploiting their workers and able to do it, will be asking us for additional subsidies to help them address the environmental impacts that they profit from. And so that it just have a little frustration. I'm glad we're moving in this direction, and I think it's the right thing to do, but I'm gravely concerned about the additional impact that will be borne, particularly by the drivers who are already misclassified and already underpaid and undercompensated, and the continued effort to have government step in to subsidize this. We just went through this during the pandemic. You have a body of workers that are fundamentally misclassified, and because they're not employees for the company, then they're not eligible for unemployment insurance. So then what happens when they are unemployed because of a pandemic? Well, then taxpayers step in with trillions of dollars of pandemic unemployment assistance to bear the full cost and weight of subsidizing what they don't get already. And so I fear as we go forward, we're going to create a situation where those workers will continue to bear that full cost. And so I'm interested in exploring perhaps additional legislative action that can ensure that as we move towards these environmental goals, the companies themselves are actually the ones that are paying for this transition and process. I think the transparency piece is very important in terms of ensuring the data around compliance and the tracking and mileage of that is very publicly accessible, so there can be some independent review. I have some concerns with the PUC's ability to ensure enforcement. And we need to give a little time to let them assess what their process will be. But in general, they're not historically an enforcement agency. And so I have a little concern, and we're going to have to watch that very closely. But the final point I want to make is echoing a little bit of what Dr. Sperling said. And that is that I think that there's a broader issue that as we explore TNCs, we need to be very mindful of. And as we start structuring and thinking about structuring either incentives or penalties around things, I think we need to do this in a very wide open way about the broader impact of TNCs in our society. And this is not just that their emissions are 3 times higher or 50% more or any of the other types of things we do. I think we got to look at what is the stated intention and purpose of these companies. If you go to Uber's public filings, as a part of their IPO process, they were very clear that they are in business to take market share away from public transit. Before they offered their stock, they said that is a $1 trillion market that we are going to go after, meaning they are not inclined to figure out how to support transit. By their own actions and words, they exist to destroy transit. And they have been very clear about this because they think that is market share that they can capture. And so if we are not very intentional about how we set up this system, then we are going to be subsidizing the death spiral of transit. And as chair of a transit agency, I think about this a lot. If they come in to say we're going to be a competitor and we're willing to lose billions of dollars a year in order to capture market share, and then transit loses ridership and loses revenue, then we will lose service, which I think is the intention and the point. And then we'll be stuck in an environment where we have more congestion, more greenhouse gas emissions, more air pollution, less transit services and options, and then we're not going to be able to go in and recreate those. And then what happens to the price at that point and the impact on the consumers? And so I think as we move forward, we really need to think about how we can possibly have this in a way. Look, we have stated goals around air quality. And the point Dr. Sperling made about congestion is very good, because not every VMT is the same when it comes to how much air pollution is created. A VMT that is highly congested is going to contribute much more significantly. And so as we start getting people out of transit into vehicles, one person in a car, we're going to significantly increase congestion. And so I'm just mindful of how much we do in terms of subsidizing not only labor exploitation, but subsidizing the potential negative impact and destruction of our public transit system, and potentially subsidizing increased air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. And so I think as we go forward, a number of states have directly charged them per trip or per mile. And those are things that I think in California, we need to explore how we do, part of which could be used to directly provide help and assistance to the drivers in terms of the electrification of what we're doing. And part of this, I think, really needs to be designed around developing a system that will force the integration with transit. I think that there can be a role for TNCs to play in augmenting transit and enhancing transit, right? I do see tremendous value, but I do not believe for 1 minute that they will get there on their own, because of their own stated filings and their own business model and approach. And so I just think as we move forward, we have a lot we need to be mindful of, both in the actions we take as a board and in what we advocate for in the legislature. Thank you.